Is this on now? Ah, good. So welcome and good morning. My name is Lama Tom Broadwater, and they allow me to come and speak at least once a month here. And it's always a privilege and a pleasure to do that. And I see some new faces here. That's wonderful. Anyone's first time here? Welcome. Great. Good to see you. And come on back. So what is customary for us is to set our intentions before we get started by reciting what is called the refuge vow. And we're going to do that. So it's on this sheet. So let's begin. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. We'll say this 3 times. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. So let's, before we begin, let's just take a few moments to meditate. I will do a guided meditation if that's okay. I'll lead you in meditation. So the posture is important when we're meditating, and the most important thing is to keep your back nice and straight, otherwise comfortable. And your gaze is an open-eyed gaze. We don't close our eyes in this lineage. We keep our eyes open and sort of off the end of our nose and in front, and a soft, nice soft gaze. We're not staring at anything in particular. And we simply put our attention on our breath, observing our breath, and keeping our attention on the breath. And our intention is basically not only to gain clarity for ourselves, but for all beings by our example. So I will guide you for a few moments in meditation. Just relax your mind and your body, not making any effort or trying to practice anything. You might move around a bit to relax your upper body, if that's something you need to do. Maybe take a couple of deep breaths. So direct your mind to the focal support, which is your breath, not letting it wander to anything else. Just remaining there without distraction. Don't try to entertain any thoughts. If thoughts arise, simply recognize them and let them go. But basically, we're not trying to think of anything at all. Just be at ease in what they call the natural state. Just be at ease. Don't reflect. Don't think. Don't speculate. In a sense, don't even meditate. Just rest naturally. Observing the breath. Notice the little bit of stillness that exists in your mind. And let it go for a moment and stop meditating. And then go back, apply yourself again. The idea here is in any one session of meditation, you may have many little meditations. So again, when you've noticed stillness, drop that, stop meditating, relax, and then return to your meditation. Every once in a while, perk up and remain relaxed. Alert, but relaxed. Thank you. So the idea here is when you're meditating, particularly for us as beginners, we don't want to sort of, what you can get into when you're meditating is sort of like space out, right? So the idea is periodically to perk up while remaining relaxed, keep alert, and do short sessions of meditation. Don't try to extend it for a whole hour or 20 minutes or whatever. But within a 20-minute session, you may have 4 or 5 little sessions. That's particularly helpful to us as beginners. You can spread that time out between the sessions. You can make it longer, depending upon your practice. but do that slowly. So today we're going to talk about interdependent origination. Again, don't let that scare you off. I'll try to make it as simple as I possibly can. As I said before, I've given this talk before, but I've came across much better information than I had a few months ago. And it was basically from a Trungpa Rinpoche's book. Well, it's not a book, it's actually a booklet. And it's called The 12 Links of Interdependent Origination. I really liked the book. And since I read that booklet, I've given 4 talks on it, so I should be able to give it without too much trouble today. I gave it for a group, a Dallas group, and I also gave it for a group, KTD group, our home monastery. So hopefully, I'll have some good information for you. So today what I want to do is give you the historical context for what are called the 12 links of interdependent origination. That's the first thing I want to do. The second thing I want to do is to take each link and explain them to you. And thirdly, and perhaps most importantly, give you some reason why you would want to study this in the first place, and give you some practical applications for this, for these 12 links. It's also called Bhava Chakra, which is basically the wheel of life. And I've passed out some copies of that for you. It's sort of a pictogram of the 12 links and what's called the endless cycle of rebirths governed by the law of interdependent origination. And again, like I said, we'll try to give you the practical implications of our studies today. So what I want to tell you about this is, first of all, there are basically 3 vehicles within the Buddhist practice here. And the first is what's called the Hinayana, or foundational vehicle. This represents what are called foundational teachings. They're not some of the higher, more elevated teachings, you might say. These are foundational. And what does that mean? That means that basically it's relative truth. It's not absolute truth. It's basically showing you the world of appearances, things as how they appear, not necessarily as how they ultimately are. As we know, as Buddhists, that all things are considered to be empty, empty appearing. And so that's the ultimate view. But in the world of appearances, this is, the world that we live in, the world that we experience, and this is called relative truth. So this is about the relative truth. So each religion and many philosophies have explanations for the origin of this relative world, this world that appears. And many religions, probably most or all the major ones, have creation stories, right? Creation stories, like Adam and Eve. Well, there's no such parallels in Buddhism. And because we don't have any reference to a creator God. There's just none of that in Buddhism in terms of an explanation for this relative world. At the time of the Buddha, there were certain nihilistic philosophies that stated that there really was no cause or causes for this relative world. They thought things were just haphazard. They just happened. There was no cause. Well, today, because of our scientific view, we do know everything in the world does have a cause. So I think it's a little easier to see that that's part of the Buddhist view, that everything has a cause. everything that appears is caused by something else. So I think we can get that part. But many philosophies and religions think that the causes themselves have a divine origin, a divine cause, gods or God who made all things appear, including our own existence. And because of that, because that is their belief that everything was created by God, including ourselves, we have some sort of duty to that God or gods to reverence them because they're the source of our lives. And our happiness, in fact, depends upon our reverencing those gods. There's no such belief within Buddhism. To counteract those views, the Buddha taught what's called interdependence as a way things manifest. The Buddha taught about the profound connectedness as the nature of all appearances. Everything is connected to everything else. And another way of looking at that is nothing is the creator of itself. I mean, you did not, obviously you didn't create yourself. You are the results of causes and conditions. And that's what the Buddha believed. He further broke this down in a process in terms of our own internal life. So in this process, everything appears because of a specific cause. Everything we experience in the outer world appears as a result of a cause. Take a very simple example, an apple seed. An apple seed, what does it? It produces a tree, an apple tree. But every cause has a specific, every appearance has a specific cause. For example, an apple seed doesn't produce a pear tree, so everything has a specific cause. So while the Buddha was interested in the outer world and cause and effect in the outer world and the interconnection of things in the outer world, he was much more concerned about our inner world, our mind. And he was even more concerned about, when he looked at minds, he looked at what? Suffering. That's what he was interested in. His concern about ultimate, why things exist outside, was less important than looking at his own internal self and figuring out why it is that we as beings suffer. Basically, he was looking at what's the cause of suffering. So when he looked at the mind and suffering, he saw that they too were the result of causes and conditions. He saw that, and here's an important point, he saw that from beginningless time there was a process of a series of interlocking steps. Each step is dependent upon the previous step for the next step to appear. So whatever happened, whatever appears here is a result of something previous. Whatever happens next is a result of what happened before. And if we can begin to understand that process internally, what's going on in our mind, we start to begin to understand this internal process, this internal, inner experience. And like I said, he taught 12 steps in that process. What's interesting about this, if we dismantle this process, this suffering, what's the cause of our suffering? And he comes to the conclusion that there are 12 steps. And he said that if we could dismantle that process, we would dismantle our suffering and we would be liberated. So that's sort of why this teaching is sort of important, helping us to understand how we could dismantle our unhappiness, how we could dismantle our suffering. So again, let me restate that we're examining the inner life of our minds through these 12 links of what is called interdependent origination. So let's begin. So when the Buddha looked at our inner world of our mind, he saw the first step in this chain of suffering of this world of existence to be ignorance. It's the most fundamental step. It's the beginning. This ignorance colors everything subsequent. It pervades our lives, this ignorance. And what is this? What are we ignorant about? You might say instead of original sin, we have original ignorance. So because of this, all appearances that appear to us are deluded because of this original ignorance. And all of our suffering is dependent upon that ignorance. So every project that we perform or act out, every project that we begin in samsara about trying to create happiness is colored by this ignorance. And I'll come back to that point a little bit later. So again, what is the basic ignorance? According to the Buddha, we are confused and deluded, and we project things as real that do not exist. That's the most basic ignorance we as human beings have. We project as real things that do not exist. And what's most real to all of us? Me, I'm real. We think that we are real. And according to the Buddha, there is no self. And we're under the mistaken belief that this self that we project is real. And that's our confusion, and that's our confusion throughout our lives. And it fashions everything subsequent and creates all our unhappiness. We are confused because in this fog of ignorance, we believe that material objects can make us happy, right? That our cravings can be satisfied once and for all, and we can become stably happy. That's deluded happiness. And we are forever adopting ignorant ways and lifestyles to make us happy. There's some good news in all this, by the way, so don't get lost here. So even though there is no real self, it is because our confusion about what is real and not real exists, because it is nothing substantial or real. It is possible to eliminate. So let me state that another way. If samsara and our confusion were real, was solid, and not the result of confusion, it would be almost impossible to eliminate. Are you following me so far? I'm getting a few heads shaking. Yes. Basically, if it were real and solid, we couldn't get rid of it. But suffering and samsara are the result of ignorance and confusion. And by working with our confusion, our mind's confusion, it's possible It's possible to become free, to be liberated from that. So as Trungpa Rinpoche says, it is not like samsara, this worldly existence, this cycle of endless suffering. It is not like samsara is real and we have to get rid of it, but rather our perception of samsara is rooted in one basic big mistake. It is a mistake we have the potential to eliminate. And once it's eliminated, we are free from all of samsara's delusions. End of that quote. So the aim of all Buddhist teaching is to guide us in overcoming our ignorance. I'm going to make a little digression here, and it's also in the booklet that Trungpa Rinpoche has. And basically, this digression is about the three vehicles that exist within our tradition. And I've already mentioned the first one, which is the foundational vehicle. And he taught there that there is no lasting self and that it's the result of our confusion. And that's how our suffering arises. And basically, we would look at the different parts of ourselves, our sensations, perceptions, and so forth, and look at the unreality of those. Basically, we would come to the conclusion that we are made up of a heap of elements. Also, you can see this self as having no true existence. If you think about it, what I was when I was a little boy 70 years ago back in West Virginia is not the man I am now at 76. And I am not yet the person that I will be, say, 10 years from now, if I live that long. So the idea here is that the self is not something unchanging. It's always changing. So there's nothing solid or real about it. So we develop a further understanding in what is called the Mahayana vehicle, and basically that's where we not only see all of my inner world as being lacking in substantial reality, but all things lacking in reality. And in the Vajrayana, what we do, we look directly at and make a direct analysis of that through our working through meditation. We see the lack of substantiality of self and the material world. But here's the deal. On a gross level, you and I have a powerful habit of always seeing ourselves as solid, real, and substantial. It's the way we think. It's the way we have always thought. But through insightful looking, we can find that the mind is not a thing at all. It has no color, no shape, no size. And those are all necessary attributes of something that is solid, real, and substantial. Looking at my mind, I can't find anything solid, real. What color is my mind? When you put it that way, that sounds like a really ludicrous question. Yet we still have this habit of thinking of ourselves as solid and real. The importance of the 12 links of interdependent origination is they help us to understand the pervasive nature of our ignorance and the importance of eliminating it. So the 12 links can be very helpful, even a motivator for our search of who we are. So let's put this in practical terms and make a very simple but a profound point. When there is a gross or coarse way of thinking, for example, the desire for things that are powerfully attractive, instead of recognizing them to be empty of any nature, we think of things as important and we need to possess them. This ignorance is the first link. It pervades our thoughts and our feelings. It influences what we accept and what we reject, what we adopt. In Sanskrit, the word ignorance is avidya. Pardon me if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Avidya. It means not seeing. So think of it this way. If you were blind, you would understand the world differently. If you were born without sight, and then all of a sudden be given sight, you would see differently. So ignorance is about we from the beginning have seen things incorrectly. We have been blind. And the Buddha wants to allow us to see things as they really are. And in the case of what I'm talking about here today, see ourselves for what we really are. Empty, yet, of course, appearing. So that's the first step. The second step is called karmic creations. That's basically our karma. Our karma is basically the result of all the past actions that we have done. And that basically sets the stage for our current existence. Buddhists do believe in past lives. And what we bring into this life, aside from our ignorance, is also the formation, the karmic formations, our karma from previous lives. And that colors everything too. So that's the second link. The third link is consciousness. So it's the result of past actions. It's like those past actions plant a seed in our mind. We could say imprints on our consciousness. The way our consciousness has been imprinted determines the quality of our rebirth consciousness and our experiences. It's really important to recognize everything we do every day is making imprints on our consciousness. And as a result of that, if we are conducting ourselves in an unvirtuous way, unhappy future states result. If we really were understanding cause and effect, karma, if we really understood that and realized it, we would be more careful about the way what we entertain in our own minds, right? So consciousness is the next step. The next one is called form and name. Form is basically the embryo. This is how we are born. And then name is basically all those mental states that are in name only, they say. They have not yet manifest. So name and form is next. And that produces what are called the perceptual entrances. I don't need to go into this too much. It's the five senses. In addition to the five senses, there is what's called the mental consciousness. So that's the sixth sense. So those are the perceptual entrances. And those perceptual entrances are eyes, feeling, skin, so forth. that produces contact, right? That's simple to understand. When we have contact through our eyes, through our ears, of sound, and so forth, that's contact. And that's basically bringing together visual, in the case of vision, it brings together our consciousness, our visual consciousness, the object that is the visual field, and so forth. So, and they're obviously the object of the vision. The next thing is feeling. That's the next step. So keep with me here. This is getting, it's a little hard to follow, but stay with me, be patient. So what is feeling? Feeling is basically having sensual contact. As a result of that, we're going to have feeling. And there are basically three feelings: good feelings, positive feelings, pleasant feelings, unpleasant feelings, and neutral feelings, or sort of indifference. The raw feeling quality of good, bad, and indifferent is the seventh link. So here we go. Now we are at a stage of actually starting to feel. So for example, feeling of compassion for other beings, that produces good karma. Feeling hate, on the other hand, leads to negative karma. Something else happens after we feel something. When we feel something pleasant, due to contact of the senses, there arises a feeling of need. I felt this pleasant thing. I need it. Grasping. Tongpa Rinpoche calls it involvement. We get involved with the thing, whatever it is. So we feel good about it, and we get involved with it. We grasp at it. So that's the next stage. The next stage beyond that is, now that we've got involved in it, he calls the next stage, and I love this, he calls this making plans. So once I feel something really good, I'm going to make plans to make sure it happens again. And in fact, when we think about it, that's basically what we do in life, always making plans. And we basically build our character based upon what we think is desirable. Some believe, it's an intellectual pursuit. That's going to make me happy. For others, it's sex, rock and roll. Those are old terms, whatever term you want to use now. Those kind of things are what make us happy. So we adopt, based upon our feelings, we adopt a lifestyle, actually, to pursue that happiness. Remember, however, going way back to the very first link, that adoption, whatever it is based upon ignorance. So we ignorantly think that what we adopt is going to make us happy. So that's the 10th link. So it's basically this idea, this decision to put into action what we are thinking and feeling up to this point. And that leads to the next, which is called becoming. So in becoming, when we adopt a certain way we're going to operate in this world to increase our happiness and to avoid our unhappiness, we become the person we are. That's called becoming. So at this stage in the 12 links, we are live actors in the drama of samsara. We are doing actual physical, verbal, and mental actions, and these actions are still under the influence, as I say, of ignorance. And so once we start acting, we're creating karma. We're planting seeds. And this, according to Buddhist teaching, will result in a future rebirth. And that's the next. And what happens, this falls off at least once. And what happens next beyond that, if we have rebirth, or if we have old age and death, then we have rebirth. So the cycle starts all over again. So we come back into the world with our ignorance and our karma to play that out over and over again in ignorance. So let's look a little bit on our chart here. And if you don't have one, you can look off somebody else. It's called the Wheel of Life. It's sort of a pictogram, and I love it because it's sort of like a cartoon. Here's the deal here. It's not, this is like what life is like. It's not like, don't think this is real either. It's a portrayal. It's like this. It's pointing to a reality, but it's not, Do you get what I'm saying? It's a cartoon. It helps us. So this monster above is called Yama, basically the Lord of Death. And he's a reminder of impermanence. He's got a hold of the whole cycle of samsara. This whole thing is called samsara. The cycle of birth, death, rebirth, and so forth. So in the very center, you see a pig with a snake, with a bird. The pig represents ignorance, the snake represents aggression, and the bird represents, it's usually a rooster, but here it's just a bird, represents desire. And basically, that's the hub of our existence. Everything it keeps the thing going. Our ignorance, our desire, and our aggression. The next part of that wheel is you see people ascending beyond your left, going up, and then on the right in the dark is people going down. And basically, the idea here is that by virtuous activity, we go to higher realms, and in the darker area, when we produce unvirtue, then we produce, we go into lower realms. So that's that little teaching. The next is the 6 realms. Now, it doesn't matter whether you believe that these are true or not, but you can at least see, by the way, I do believe that there are these 6 realms, but you don't have to. You can see them more as psychological states, which is fine. So, over there on the bottom half to your left, that represents the human realm, which, by the way, is the best realm according to Buddhist teaching to be born in, because there's just enough pain and unhappiness here to spur us on to find truth, but enough leisure that we can actually spend some time, if we're fortunate, spend some time finding out the truth. So that's the best realm to be born in. I'm sorry, I misspoke. I gave this talk 4 times and I still mess up. So actually, the human realm is in the top quadrant and to your left. I'm sorry. That's the human realm. And it basically shows all the activities involved in the human realm. The next 2 realms are the God realms and the jealous God realms. You would think that being in the God realm would be a nice thing to do. You know, you got all kinds of leisure, nice things. But the problem with that, according to Buddhist teaching, is that it is so nice you never think about Dharma. You never think about getting out of this this realm of cycle of suffering. And the other thing is, and you could think of this like someone like Musk, Elon Musk, who is a billionaire. He has all kinds of money, but one day he's going to all of a sudden recognize, oh, you know, I'm going to die, and all this stuff I've accumulated, it's not going to help me one bit. So being in the God realm is not the best thing in the world. Being in the human realm is our best bet of getting out of this problem of suffering. Below that, in the lower quadrant, is the animal realm. It's nice, peaceful, looks like a good place to go. However, when you think about it, most animals are worried about predators. They're always looking around to make sure, or looking for prey. looking for prey. The next, below that, directly down below, is the hell realms. And to your left, in the lower half, is the what's called the Preta realm. These are folks that are always lacking, always feeling they have lacked stuff, and never can get, they don't see, when they try to consume food, it's actually poison for them. And the Buddhist belief is basically many of these folks are there because of their greed from previous lives. So again, whether you can picture these as truly experiential realms or not, you can at least understand the psychological states. You know, you do see, even in this world, people that are greedy. You do see people that are suffering hellish states. You do see people running around sort of like animals, ignorant. So that's the portrayal of that. And the outer realm is the 12 links. So let's go to the backside. Backside, ignorance is portrayed as the blind person. We're running out of time, so I'm going to go really quickly here. Ignorance is portrayed as a blind person. The next is the potter, and that represents basically our karmic formations, everything that we've had from previous lives. And if you look over there, way over on the right, that says that's what we bring into this life from our past life. So we bring into this life our ignorance and our karma. In the present life, linked to the past, we bring our consciousness, name and form, which I said was the embryo. Our 6 senses develop out of the embryo. As a result of those 6 senses, we have contact and feeling. And feeling, it's interesting, they portray that as a stick being stuck in the eye. So the idea here is there is an element of suffering even in good things. Oh, how could that be? Well, the idea is that if you think about it, anytime something really nice happens to you, I don't know about you, say, for example, you're at the beach, and you're laying there on the beach, and you're there for 2 weeks, and on the next to the last day, you say, oh my gosh, got to go back to work. So even in pleasant things, there is this element of recollection that it's not going to last forever. So the idea that even good things produce some unhappiness. So all feeling is said to have the stick in the eye. Next is craving, and that's a man drinking. The next is grasping, and that's a monkey grabbing at a fruit. Becoming is just the person. Birth is their demonstrated as a woman giving birth. And old age and death is a man carrying, and that's a corpse on his back. He's carrying a corpse. So, how do we get out of this? How do we get out of this? Truly, I mean, how do we get out of this? The Buddha provides an answer for us. He's going to help us. And the answer is, we can't do much about how do we feel, right? I mean, that's sort of instinctual. We come into this world with certain things and we develop certain habits in terms of what we like and we dislike. Can't help that too much. So that's not where we would intervene in the beginning. But the next stage is craving, grabbing at things, wanting things. So here's where we can intervene. So we have this feeling of pleasure. We don't always have to go grab it. And so the Buddha taught us how to let go. And meditation is one of the major ways that the Buddha taught us. So when something comes up in our mind, a thought, a pleasant thought or unpleasant or whatever, meditation allows us the freedom to let go of it. We don't have to grab at everything that comes by. And that's, we don't have to be ignorantly thinking everything I have to have because the solid, real me has to have this solid, real thing. We can start to develop a greater lightness about things. We can let things go. It's not something we can do right away, but over time we can develop that ability. So meditation is really very helpful, but it's not the sole answer. And why do I say that? A couple of weeks ago, I was talking to a person that I'm mentoring right now, and he said, Lama Tom, I've been meditating for years, and my wife still gets me upset. I still get upset. And sometimes I really do stupid stuff around her. But he says, I'm making progress. But why is it that I still do this ignorant reaction to something that I know is stupid? And the answer is pretty simple. First of all, let's recognize what he said. He made progress. So it doesn't act out necessarily. The feeling's in his mind and he wants to do something but it's still hard. So what's still there is ignorance. He's still thinking of this person did something and I have to react. Because I'm real, and by George, when somebody does something to me, I have to do something in return. That's our ignorance, so we have to work on that. In our lineage, we have what is called Mahamudra, which is basically beginning to look at the nature of reality. That's a long way off for all of us. But there is a process we can go through of looking at our minds and looking at reality and recognizing that there's nothing real or substantial about it. The other thing that I want to convey here is and this is more the Vajrayana approach, that while our ignorance has been beginningless, it doesn't have to be endless. And the other thing to recognize, and this is through deity practices and so forth that we do here, we can begin to recognize that what exists with our ignorance is what's called our Buddha nature. And they use this analogy. Our Buddha nature is like the sun. Clouds come and clouds go. Clouds represent our ignorance. They're nothing substantial. The sun, what is our true nature, is there all the time, waiting for us to discover it. As intermediate steps, you might say, to that Buddhahood, we can adopt. Remember what I said about we often adopt really stupid stuff, thinking this will make us happy? Well, we have in the Mahayana vehicle what's called the way of the Bodhisattva. So we can adopt a lifestyle of an enlightened approach to life. And that enlightened approach to life is basically recognizing that other people are more important than ourselves. And what does that do? That breaks down this solid real self and start paying more attention to others and their needs rather than me, my, and I. So that's breaking down our ignorance. And it's very helpful to coming to the sun of our Buddhahood. And you know, we take the long approach. We may or may not reach it in this lifetime. Depends on your perseverance, it depends upon your karma, but we can make positive steps towards our happiness through the adoption of the way of the Bodhisattva. I think it was last week they had a Bodhisattva vow, right? I think some people took it here. It's basically pledging your life to altruistic behavior. That we're going to mess up on that all the time, but we're making the vow that that's going to be my focus. That's the lifestyle I'm going to adopt. So that also can be very helpful. So there are all sorts of ways to get to that sun, you might say. I'm going to return to what Trungpa Rinpoche said. It is not like samsara, this cycle of endless, what seems like endless, but certainly beginningless suffering, is real. We don't have to get rid of it. Rather, our perception, the big mistake, our ignorance, that's what we got to eliminate. And we have the potential to do that. Buddhahood is not that all of a sudden we go from one place to another. Things will not change when we become Buddhas. What changes is our perception. What changes is our ignorance. So we all have the Buddha's teaching. We have enlightened practices of this lineage to dispel the clouds of our ignorance and break that chain of interdependent origination. And most importantly, you and I have Buddha nature. Yeah, it's sometimes hard to see because of our own ignorance and our afflictive emotions, but it's there. So my advice is go about your practice, your meditation, whatever other practices you adopt based upon your training here. Go about it confidently, mindfully, resolutely, joyfully, confidently, knowing that you have this Buddha nature, knowing that you have great teachers who have realized the nature of things and can help you. But most importantly of all, I would tell you, go slowly and steadily. Go slowly, go steadily. I've run over. I apologize for that. I'll stick around if anybody has questions, but we do need to end. So let's take the dedication. Again, thank you so much for your attention today. I was looking out here and I didn't see anyone falling asleep. So thank you for your patience and your perseverance in sticking with me on this. So let's recite the dedication of merit, and we'll say it in English. By this merit, may all attain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, those things we just talked about. From this ocean of samsara, which we also talked about, may I free all beings. The courageous Manjushri, who knows everything as it is, Samanta Bhadra, who also knows in the same way, and all the bodhisattvas, that I may follow in their path. I completely dedicate all this virtue. Again, thank you so much. Have a good week.